In this video, we're going to show you how to install the control arm on your Volvo S60 located in your front suspension. Using our 19mm socket, we're going to loosen and remove the lug studs. Go ahead and grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. On the outboard portion of our control arm, we have our ball joint here from our knuckle. There's an 18mm nut here. We're going to use our socket, loosen, and remove this. Now on the rearward portion of our control arm, we have a bolt going up through the bottom here, comes up, and there's a nut on the top of it. So we're going to use our 18mm socket and impact gun on the bolt, and then we're going to use a 21mm box and wrench on the nut. Let's loosen and remove this. Now on the inside here, there is a frame lip where it's best for us to use an angled box wrench to get in here. These are 15mm. These tend to be pretty snug. And the angle of it will hit the transmission depending on if you're using a socket or something like that. So that's why we're not using a ratchet on there, due to the clearance on there. Let's go ahead and break this one free. Now I'm going to switch over to a swivel head gear wrench. Now this bolt here, you don't have a lot of clearance to get that out, but that's fine. As long as it's disconnected from the forward bushing on the control arm, we're good. Before we pry out our control arm, we want to go ahead and take the ball joint nut, and we're just going to thread on just a couple threads. Using a 13mm socket, we're going to loosen and remove our axle nut. Now with the axle nut removed, you want to go ahead and make sure that you can pull out and make sure that the axle or the CV axle is moving in and out of the splines. If not, you want to use a brass punch. Go ahead and knock that axle free. That way when we pull out on this here, it's not pulling on the CV axle. Now when we pry this out, if this happens to want to fall out, this nut's going to capture this control arm so it doesn't fall and hit us or land on our foot. So let's go ahead and use a pry bar. And we're going to come around to the back side here, right between the subframe and that control arm, and try and work this out. Make sure that your CV axle is moving in. Now with the control arm free, remove that nut and remove the control arm. On the old control arm, we want to go ahead and swap over our bump stop using a 10mm socket. We want to go ahead and loosen these two and swap it over to the new control arm. Ours broke, not a big deal. We're just going to go ahead and get a replacement bolt for it. Take your control arm, line it up with that ball joint, and get that nut started just a couple threads. Make sure our axle is in there. Line this up. Go ahead and line this up. Get our bolts started. Then we'll go ahead and snug them down. Now we need to maneuver this here, get our axle up towards the wheel hub. Once you have the axle in place here, I'm going to go ahead and install the axle nut. We just want to get that caught just a few threads. Next step we want to do is we want to go ahead and loosen and remove our knuckle to strut bolts here. There's going to be two of them. It's an 18 millimeter bolt head and a 21 millimeter nut. So we're just going to use our ratchet and our wrench. You can use an impact gun if you want. Now we have our whole knuckle assembly supported by a jack right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove our strut bolts from our knuckle. A little bit of pressure, and I remove this bolt. Pop out our ABS wire here. And take that strut assembly, move it off to the side. I do want to go ahead and get our control arm kind of lined up here. The reason why we're pushing the strut off to the side here so it doesn't pinch the bolt or pinch the boot on the axle. And you can see that our control arm is starting to line up with the inside here. Use our mallet. Now at this point we're going to use an awl to go up to the bottom, and we want to insert our bolt up through the bottom. And get that nut started on the top. Now that we have the back bolt in, let's go ahead and install the two front bolts. Now we're going to go ahead and install our forward bolt, feed that through. Now we're just going to grab that control arm. Just need to kind of finagle that a little bit. All right. Now you get that front bolt installed, we're going to go ahead and just get a couple threads, and then we'll get the back one. Now I'm just going to go ahead and snug these down. Going to lower our jack down. Let's get that out of the way. And at this point here, we can push down, get our strut in a position. Now we put a pry bar inside the hole in the middle of our control arm. We want to use that as leverage to go ahead and pull us down and try and work our knuckle into that strut. Go ahead and get your bolt ready. We're going to push this down and in. I have to kind of work that strut around a little bit. And we're going to use our awl here to go ahead and line up our knuckle. Just enough to get our bolt started on the other side. Now in some cases you can use a screwdriver for something like this here. go ahead and get the lower bolt started. I should be able to just rock this back and forth, and that lower bolt hole should line up. All right, we have both of those bolts in. I'm going to go ahead and install the nuts here. Now I'm going to go ahead and install my ABS wire back in the brackets. You know, these here generally go in a lot easier if you use this little trick here. Spray down the bushings with some spray solvent. And most of the time they slide right in. Now you don't want to pull on the wires. Make sure you're pulling on both sides of the rubber grommet itself. I'm going to do the same on this one here. There we go. Don't forget your axle bolt here. We're just going to run that in a few more threads. We'll tighten everything down later on. We want to go ahead and snug down our rear control arm bolt. Now the next stages that we need to do, we need to tighten and torque our hardware in the neutral ride height. That means if you had the wheel on the vehicle and it was on the ground and it compresses your suspension to a neutral ride height where the weight of the vehicle is on the ground. The reason for that is that you don't want to torque any of the equipment or twist it so that then you drop the vehicle on the ground and all the suspension is preloaded and things start to bind. That's going to cause premature wear on the components, and then you're going to end up replacing parts early again anyways. So at this point here, we have our jack underneath our control arm here. We're going to go ahead and raise this up. And you can see here, watch this. You can see that this knuckle shifts. I'm going to do this again. You can see that shift. That is going to be an alignment specification. So when you're done with all this job here and you get the wheels back on it and you're going down the road, you want to bring it to an alignment shop and make sure you can get this properly aligned. Otherwise, you're going to get premature tire wear. You don't want that to happen. What we're going to do at this point here, we're going to jack up and compress our suspension just to the point where it starts to come off our vehicle support. You see our suspension still compressing, and there it is right there. Now what we want to do, we're going to go ahead and torque the knuckle bolts here to 77 foot-pounds plus an additional 60 degrees. So let's go ahead and torque these first. I'm going to use an 18 millimeter wrench, 21 millimeter socket. Do the same on the bottom. Okay. And then you probably wonder how we're going to do that 60 degrees. We're going to show you how to do that. Now we're going to show you how to go ahead and get our 60 degrees additional on the nut tightening here. We're going to use a marker, and we're going to mark at, let's see, we'll make it easy for us here. We're going to mark this on the bottom because our nut is going to be rotating clockwise. And if we do straight down, now 60 degrees is an acute angle, and 90 degrees would be if we brought this red mark right here up facing us perfectly. 60 degrees is just going to be shy of that. So we want this red mark to be pointing down just a little bit, just shy of our 90 degrees facing straight at us. Well, we still have a little ways to go there. There we go. We're just shy of our 90, which is perfect. We're going to go ahead and do the same for the bottom. There we go. Perfect. Now on the inside of the frame here, we have our two 15mm bolts right here. These need to get torqued to 47 foot-pounds plus an additional 105 degrees. Now that these are torqued to 47 foot-pounds, we need to tighten them to an additional 105 degrees, which is a little bit more than 90, which is a full quarter turn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark these with my marker at, say, 6 o'clock, straight down. Now we're going to tighten these here so they come out just beyond facing the rear of the vehicle. Go. Let's go ahead and do the same for the forward front bolt here. Now our rear control arm bolt needs to get torqued to 77 foot-pounds plus an additional 180 degrees. Okay, now I'm going to carry that same process. We're going to mark the head of the bolt, and then we're going to go ahead and crank that an additional 180 degrees. There it is right there. We're at our 180 degrees. At this point here, we can go ahead and lower down our jack. Now let's go ahead and torque down our ball joint nut here to 36 foot-pounds plus an additional 40 degrees. Here we go. Our mark on our nut is perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and torque down our axle nut to 25 foot-pounds. We'll go ahead and pop our flathead screwdriver into one of the cooling fins here. All right. Now we need to go ahead and tighten this an additional 90 degrees. So what we're going to do is take our marker, mark our bolt at about 12 o'clock. We need to get that 12 o'clock mark over to the right-hand side, 90 degrees. All right, these are 90 degrees. Remove the screwdriver. Go ahead and grab that wheel. I like to line up one of the lug holes here with the hole in the rotor, usually about 12 o'clock position, and get that top one started. And then go ahead and get the other ones started in place. Once we get them all started, we can snug them down. When doing this here, it's best to do it in a crisscross or a star pattern. Let's go ahead and torque them. Now that we have our lug studs installed, let's go ahead and torque them down to 103 foot-pounds. You want to do this in a crisscross pattern or a star pattern. and you're all set. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.